All right, and welcome to the Indy Investor Pod. This is Brian, and we are Indy investors talking Indy investing. So super excited to have this episode today. I got my boy Nick Giulioni on here with me today, and he loves Indy investing so much that he decided to move to Indianapolis, which is super exciting and things. So we are going to get into everything that he dealt with out of state, in state, now that he's here, all those types of things. So with that, let's get on with the show. So, all right, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. My name is Brian Snyder, and I'm their host today. And I got my boy Nick Giulioni here with me today. Nick, how's it going, man?
Man, I am so excited to be here on the podcast today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are an Indy investor and you're in Facebook groups and things like that, you might know Nick. You might know his name. You might recognize it. He's built a pretty good portfolio here. He's doing some fix and flips here in Indianapolis. He also provides some pretty good content. I know he and his wife just put out an article about building your team here in Indy, and some good stuff coming out of them. And really appreciate your guys' heart and just your efforts and just your ability to give back and communicate with people here in Indy. So for that, man, I just want to thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I can't take any credit for the plug. I basically talk at my wife, Diane, for about an hour, very similar to a podcast like this, and she's able to turn it into something halfway intelligent. So she really gets all the credit.
No, that's awesome. So that's great. That's great. You guys are able to work together like that too. So
Yeah.
that's good stuff. So Nick, let's just start off. Let's get into a little bit of just kind of your strategy. So why don't you just tell everybody, kind of fill in people on just what you're doing here in Indy, and everything you got going on.
Yeah. It really comes down to opportunism. I don't have a necessarily set strategy at this point, and maybe I should at this point. But generally speaking, what my portfolio consists of is a lot of long-term buy and holds, and that's been really what I've focused on for the last 3 years that I've been investing in the out-of-state market of Indy, and more recently have really been enjoying following in the Perez's footsteps, the fix and flip game. Been really trying to kind of get my feet wet there. Done a couple of those, and so yeah, at this point, it's a little bit of both, honestly.
Nice. So with your buy and holds, like what kind of strategy are you using with those? Are you using your money? Are you burying those? Are you kind of talk to us through that and kind of what you're doing for your funding and stuff?
Yeah, again, opportunism, kind of whatever works. I started off with the turnkey, have Burr properties. Those have been wildly successful for me. Very, very thankful for that. But then also really some of the stuff that I'm most known for within the Indy out-of-state group is some of these no money down deals that I've been able to pull off through portfolio acquisitions. In many cases, bought, in one case 6, one case 25, and currently working on another 8 right now, where I actually got paid at the closing table due to throwing together a portfolio deal with other investors.
So awesome, man. And I love how you even just put that up there. Like it's the opportunity. That's what it comes into, what makes sense. And I know even just having a couple conversations with you of, you're a numbers guy. You like the analytic. You like the kind of the high level thought process that comes into that. And that's where I am too. That's what I love, the data behind it, the numbers behind everything like that. So I really appreciate that. So when it comes to that, let me start with that. Since I know you're a high level thinker, you like the analytic side and things. So why Indianapolis? If you were, out in Cali and you decided to, choose Indianapolis, why Indy?
Yeah, I really evaluated a bunch of different markets, and it came down to two main things. One was the rent to value ratio, which was huge. Generally beating that 1% rule in the C, B class properties. So that was really important to me. The second piece was when I started off 3 years ago, I didn't have a ton of cash to invest. Didn't really, couldn't afford to continue investing in the Southern California market where I owned our house hack. So wanted to find something where I could get in for $20,000 to $30,000 down and get the ball rolling. And for those two reasons, I really dug into the Indy market. Obviously, there's incredible job growth. Net migration has been absolutely fantastic. It's ton of renters and really a ton of development, particularly because of so many here investors in this group here. We're just seeing incredible development and appreciation over time. So all of those factors are why I started and continue to invest in Indy.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, man. Really good insights on that. I want to kind of break this into, so let me get this straight. You are officially in Indianapolis right now?
Technically, no. I'm
Okay.
actually up in Fishers, but close enough for
Okay.
government work.
You're in Indiana, right?
Yeah,
So that's all
yeah.
right. Yeah. So awesome. Okay. Well, welcome. You're a Hoosier now. So I was not born here. So I've become a Hoosier. So you can be in that group with me as well.
Appreciate it.
So welcome. I want to kind of break this into a little bit of maybe like two parts to this podcast of like kind of maybe let's talk a little bit about when you were, an out-of-state investor investing in Indianapolis. And then later on in the episode, we can get into a little bit of, hey, what advantages are you looking for and really want to take advantage of now that you are here and stuff like that. So let's start as an out-of-state investor. Let's start with, the big thing is, I think when you are out of state and you're investing in Indianapolis, coming out here, checking out the different parts of Indy, understanding the city, looking at things like that. But then also the big thing is building your team. So let's dig into that a little bit of what recommendations you kind of see for other people, or you want to just tips, advice you want to give out there for when you are, hey, I want to make I want to make that or buy that first property in Indianapolis, or I'm ready to go all in. I'm going to try to get 10 this year. But the first thing you need to do is build your team. So what advice do you have for people that are kind of in that standpoint?
Yeah, I think David Green did a pretty good job of setting the stage for everybody, talking about the core four. I think it goes a little beyond that, though. With that said, it definitely starts with the agent. You need to find an investor-friendly agent, particularly if you're going to be buying MLS deals. A little bit different if you're going to be doing the wholesale route. I might advocate, and this might not be a popular opinion here on this particular podcast, at least for your first one, have a fiduciary in your back pocket, like an agent who's kind of watching your back. Then the next piece is make sure that you get a property manager. For these two first roles, the agent and the property manager, really you should be spending time in local groups. The Indy out of state group, shout out to Ernesto for putting that together. There's a ton of resources there of people who are willing to work with you and understand the needs of an investor. Really early on, lenders are a dime a dozen. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time working with them. If you can find a nice local lender, you'll largely be fine. Contractors probably aren't going to give you the time of day early on until you're actually under contract, or you're a little bit more established. So count on the people in that group. Make sure to be looking out for reviews and put together a list of contractors, inspectors early on, likely a dime a dozen. Comes down to a tax accountant, legal team, an insurance provider. Really, all of these are steps you need to have before your first purchase. Legal team aside, that's kind of a later down the road. At some point, you will need a legal team if you're investing long enough. So really, you need to kind of tackle all those, but first focus on those first two, which are the agent and the property manager.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really good advice. I know. And you said, I like how you kind of put up of like, hey, it might not be a popular thing, we're a wholesaler. That's what we do. But I tell people all the time, hey, don't trust our numbers. You should be able to, like, we have access to the MLS. We'll run all the comps in real time, stuff like that, but get somebody else to look at it as well. Don't just trust that one person, like, hey, this is what they say. This is my opinion, things like that. Cause that's what it is. It is our opinion. So make sure you get somebody else that kind of back it up, even if it's just a buddy or an agent, anything like that. Like, hey, does this make sense? Does this look right to you? I think it's just super important. The more eyes you have on it, just the more help you're going to have.
Yeah. And to that point, I think you're hitting on something that I wasn't always necessarily great at, but I highly recommend to literally everybody who's investing out here is to have checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have a great relationship. At this point, I would feel very comfortable buying a house from you. But the truth of the matter is I wouldn't buy that house without having my contractor walk it. And I wouldn't buy that house without having my inspector walk it. I wouldn't buy that house without running it by my agent and saying, hey, what do you think the ARV is here? Running it by my property manager. You and I have a great relationship, but always have a checks and balance in place to make sure that you've got multiple people watching your back and kind of watching over each other's shoulders a little bit.
Yeah. And that's a good thing too, of like, you're saying like, hey, I'm not going to buy it unless my contractor runs through. One of our questions is going to be like, hey, have you seen it? Have you been in person? Like, have you or your contractor walked through it? Like, we want to have those conversations. So I think it's a good thing too, when you're dealing with somebody that's selling you a property, of if they're not asking you questions too, if they seem eager about it, like, that throws up some red flags for me. I'm always like, I want them to ask me those questions. Like, hey, have I seen it? Have I done this? Like, they should be asking me as many questions as I'm asking them and stuff. So no,
Exactly.
good. That's a really good tip. So you've, like I said, so you've gained a pretty, or built a pretty big portfolio, as you were out of state, and then you had to basically, being with that distance and things, you really had to trust that property manager and those people that your team here in town. So what advice do you have? I think that's a big thing and a lot of conversation I've seen with a lot of out of state investors, whether it's California or Colorado, New York, Florida, Montana, wherever. That's a big thing of, hey, who's your property manager? How are they working for you? And things like that. And the reality is that the person that works great for Nick might not be the same person that works great for Brian. It's whatever your personality is, whatever you need, and things like that. So when you're coming back or coming into what you're looking for from a property manager, what's some advice you have for those people that are kind of putting those feelers out there and they're interviewing property managers, and they're not just going to go with, oh, Dan Perez said this, so this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be like, no, I have to make sure they fit for me as well.
Yeah, you definitely need to understand a couple of different things. One, and really most importantly, above all, is how are they going to communicate with you? And does that fit your communication style? I am different than most investors that are in the Indy out-of-state group. I probably have a few more properties. So for me, being blind to what's going on with my properties for 30 days out of the month until I get a statement doesn't work for me. I need kind of a more regular communication, whether that's weekly, whether that's as issues come up. I want to be brought into the loop. Versus other people might say, hey, I want this to be a passive investment. So understand that when going into conversations with these property managers, understand incentive structures. There are a variety of different ways that these property managers get paid. Some of them are on a fixed fee, where they get X dollars per month. Some of them are on a percentage fee, which is generally how I've done it in the past. But also understand if there are other revenue streams that they could potentially be making money on, whether that's by marking up work orders, whether that's by being overly incented to turn units versus re-rent. There could be a disconnect there. So just making sure that the incentive structure aligns with how you want to personally run your business. And then third, making sure that they actually understand how to rent in that particular area that you're investing in. If you're working with a property manager that only understands A-class properties, and you've got a D-class property, they're probably not the right fit for you and won't understand the intricacies of collecting in a D-class area. So those are really the key things that I would look out for. You alluded to it earlier. We recently wrote a little blog and put together a checklist for ourselves. So, it's a free checklist download that anybody can check out on our website. If you do want to check it out, it's completely free, giulionirealestate.com. And you can download that checklist of what we look for, particularly in property managers.
So, no, good stuff. I definitely recommend checking out that article. I thought it was really well written. I think your wife did a great job, Nick. So.
Yeah. Shout out to Diane.
Yeah. So awesome stuff. So let's kind of talk into a couple of different things too. I really want to kind of dig into a little bit of, I think a lot of people view you, and if they know you, they're like, "Wow, Nick's done a really good job. He's built a good portfolio. He's flipping some properties now and stuff like that." So they view you. You're kind of at that that next level of like, hey, he's had some successes and things. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Of like, what are some things that you feel like you did that kind of created and helped you with some of those successes that you've had here in Indy as an investor. And then of course we'll dig into some of those mistakes that you made as well, that we all have, and that we all get those bumps along the way, but they're the things that really contribute to those successes. So let's start with some of those things and maybe your, couple top things that you feel like you did that really kind of set you apart or really helped you out along the way.
Yeah. There are a couple directions I want to go with this. One, I'll say I'm incredibly blessed to have a situation where well-employed, able to invest a decent amount of money into this. I think David Green's Burr book, the Low and No Money Down book by Brandon Turner, have really done a disservice for a lot of people, thinking that this is a free business. It's not. Even on the deals that I've made, that I've been able to get with no money down, I have invested in those down the line to make it a value add opportunity. So the first thing I'll say is I had really solid reserves going into all of this, and would not have been successful otherwise. That's my biggest recommendation to everybody is however much reserves you think you need, double it. Because who knows what could happen? Property managers could walk away with security deposits. You could have COVID hit and stopped collecting rent on a bunch of your units for a while without being able to evict. You never know what's going to happen. So from a high level, that's my biggest recommendation. But some of the things that have allowed me to grow really come down to my creativity. I was too dumb to know how things actually are supposed to work, and began throwing together deals that really challenged my agents and the other agents that we were working with on the selling side, understanding of how to buy and sell real estate. So just being willing to roll with the punches has really been successful. And again, I'll reference some of the stuff that Diane has written so eloquently about seller financing that's allowed us to really take on. I think we're at like 35 doors seller financed at this point.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite things just about this industry in general, that you're kind of talking about too, is just there's a solution out there if you're willing to kind of think through some things, get creative and stuff. And you might have one deal of kind of like, hey, this is my first deal. It's going to go like this. And okay, I got under contract, I close it, I got it all set up and things like that. That's very rare that any other deals that you do are going to go just as smoothly as that. There's always going to be something that might pop up. You have to get creative with, but being able to do that, being able to be, I guess, adaptive, like, will really help you out in this business. So, awesome stuff there, man. And I love that too. There's a lot of successes, and you and I were talking about this before we actually jumped on and started recording, but just the mistakes, and that's what we learn from. That's kind of how you get to that next level. That's how you have some successes, because you're going to make some mistakes across the board. And sometimes a lot of people, I kind of view it too. If I'm not making mistakes, I'm not taking enough risk. I'm not doing what I need to, because, I'm staying in my comfort zone, and sometimes that's not always good. So what are some of those mistakes that maybe you made along the way that you can share, that other people can learn from, but really kind of that you've learned from as well? And you've turned those mistakes into now successes.
Yeah, I could fill a whole book with the mistakes I've made over the last 3 years. I'll pick out a couple of the ones that I think are most relevant to people here. One is I didn't have checks and balances at all points within my business. I trusted some people a little too much, and didn't have somebody looking over their shoulder. And that really is the thing that I hope everybody takes away from this conversation is really have your people validating each other. And I didn't do that. So and that has been a 6-figure mistake in my history at this point. Hopefully we're able to get that resolved in the longer term. So that's piece number one, biggest mistake. Piece number two is I've probably been a little too friendly, totally transparently. I'm a pretty likable guy. I like to get along with people. And I've probably been a little too slow to fire. I want to see the best in everybody, but not everybody has the right temperament to work with me personally, and many of the other investors that I've talked with. So I don't think you should have a 0 strike policy, but definitely don't get too close to the people that you're working with, such that you can't have honest and frank conversations about performance. I like everybody in this out-of-state group, but not everybody is a good fit for me personally. So I'd say that those are probably my 2 biggest mistakes. The third, and this is a little bit more tactical and less high level. Always, if you can, walk the property before you close, or at least have somebody videotape the property. I had an agent way back when that I'd done one deal with who represented both sides of the deal without making that extremely clear, and ended up finally getting out here trying to understand why my rehab was way over and wasn't renting and all of that, and ended up just in tears in one of my properties, like, I can't rent this to anybody. And again, coming back to the checks and balances. So that really is are kind of the biggest mistakes we've made over the last 3 years, and will not be making again. And hopefully we have new mistakes that we can learn from.
There you go. So I like that. So, and hopefully those mistakes, it's funny how many mistakes sometimes I do make, and I'll make that comment of like, I'm never making this again. And 2 months later it might happen, but that's good. One of my other things too, and I'll just throw this in here, for everybody, that one of my favorite things about Indianapolis and just the investor community is that everybody is super friendly. And I know everybody's willing to kind of help each other out. I know you kind of brought up the point of like, hey, make sure you're not getting too friendly, that you are able to have those honest conversations. But what I'm talking about friendly is that we're out for everybody's best interest in like, hey, if somebody from California or somebody from Colorado needs a property walk, I can go have one of my acquisition guys do that in a second. Or I know that anytime that somebody puts something out there on Facebook, like, hey, I need, help with this property. Can somebody walk it for me? There's like 10 people that are going to respond right away. Like, yep, we got somebody in the area and things like that. So those little things that can end up being a pretty big mistake, money wise, when you don't have, somebody walk that property or somebody check it out and things, because you have an agent or you have a contractor that did it. If you need another eyes on the property, just put it out there, and you'll be able to have somebody, I think, help and fix that stuff for you. So that's one of the things I love about this investor community here in Indy. So
yeah, no, it's been really eye-opening for me to see just how giving everybody is. And when I say don't be friendly, that really just comes down to being able to coach and manage the people that you're paying money with on a monthly basis. Not necessarily saying to your fellow investors. I try and be as friendly as humanly possible to them.
So that's the big one of the big things that I don't think that people realize when they get into this is that like, sometimes you do have to have those tough conversations where you are going to have to fire somebody at some point, whether it's whether it's one of your employees or not, or whether they're just a contractor or whatever it is. There's tough conversations that you're going to have along the way if you're wanting to grow your business and stuff. So kind of being able to make sure you know how to do that, or you have somebody on your team that can even do that for you and stuff, I think is really important. So no, that's great, Nick. Thank you so much for that. Let's get into a little bit of now. So you're now in Fishers. You're now a Hoosier. We've adopted you as a Hoosier now. So what are some things that you're looking forward to, or maybe you've already taken advantage of like, hey, now I'm here. Now I'm in the trenches. I can get my hands on as much stuff as I can. What advantages is that going to bring to you, you think?
Yeah, I mean, there are huge advantages of actually being here and getting eyes on. I mean, I've been spending a ton of time in one of my flips getting it ready to get to market. I was able to the other day, just happened to be in downtown and walked one of your guys' properties. Fortunately, that one didn't work for me personally, but just being able to go get eyes on in a hurry is pretty freaking cool. Definitely like all of that. I'm able to validate work of my contractors. I've got two that I use on a fairly regular basis. I'm able to go out there and just kind of point things out that it's just like, hey, like, I think this could be a little better, and hold them even a little bit more accountable. Now I'll say that with a little bit of a caveat that I'm finding myself working more and more on this real estate business than I was before, which is a tough balancing act for me. Whereas before remote, I was probably giving 10 to 15 hours a week. Now I'm giving like 20 to 25, driving all around Indianapolis, checking out my properties. But I have to say, it's been pretty fantastic. In just kind of cool news, I discovered I owned a couple of plots of land right next to some houses that I own that didn't realize that we owned the tax parcels nearby. So like actually physically getting eyes on made me discover development opportunities that I wasn't aware of before. And so it's been pretty darn cool. From another level, I think I'm a little more real to people because I'm here. So that's my biggest recommendation to all of these Indy out-of-state investors is that you actually get out here and become a real person. It's a lot easier to put a name to a face when you've had a drink with somebody, when you sat down for coffee, and you're probably going to get treated better once you're a real person.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy about how much somebody you can visit somebody on Zoom, you can get to know somebody on Zoom. When you actually sit down and, like you said, have lunch or have a coffee or a drink with somebody, it's just more personable. I think it's one of the things that is tough about COVID, of people being trying to be too careful and not being around too many people. But when you are able to get, one-on-one time with somebody or with their team, get to know them, get to visit a property with them, get to drive around the city with them and stuff like that. It's a big thing. It just helps out with that trust level, I think, of just that in that relationship level as well. So Nick, is there anything how long have you been, how long ago did you move to Fishers?
Yeah, so we moved into our Fisher's house about a month ago now. We were in an Airbnb for like 4 or 5 weeks while we were waiting to close on this place. This was the closing from heck. It was terrible. So we've been here for about 2 months. Planning to be out here through at least through July of next year. Kind of waiting out COVID and see where the world takes us after that.
Yeah, that's so cool. So within that 2 months that you've been here in Indy, is there anything, and you get to know the city, a little bit better and stuff like that? And I know you've taken visits out here and stuff, and you've seen parts of it. But now that you've been here for 2 months, is there anything that surprised you, or like any area that you're like, oh man, I didn't think this area was like this. This looks good to me. Is there anything like that pops out?
Yeah, maybe being out here is shifting my thinking a little bit, but I'm largely trying to move kind of out of the C class more into the B and A class.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, I've spent a little time in Avon while out here. Absolutely awesome. Obviously walked around Fishers, Noblesville, a decent amount. Really love those areas. Would love to find some more opportunities in kind of all of those places. Because I think that the shift that we're going to see over the next couple of years with remote work becoming more and more important is a shift away from downtown centers. So I want to diversify myself. Obviously, not everybody's going to be able to do that, but being able to get kind of those higher end places outside of the downtown centers, I think will have significant values over the next couple of years.
Yeah. So, no, solid advice, man. I like it. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. You've brought some really good insights, some really good content, some really good value. I really appreciate that. As we wrap up here, is there anything else that you maybe just we didn't touch on today, or anything else that just like sticks out to you of like, hey, this is something that like I've learned along the way, or this might be something that will help you out, anything like that?
Man, I know we covered a lot of the lessons. I would really say to everybody in this group, understand that passive is absolutely a misnomer when you're talking about real estate investing. It doesn't matter what type of real estate investing, maybe outside of a REIT, it's all work. So just understand that coming in. Really to all the people that are trying to do this with, zero bank accounts, I'd wait a minute. You're never going to know what you don't know about real estate until you're here. And it's an expensive lesson. So have a little bit of savings, everybody out there. And to everybody out there, feel free to reach out to me. This is obviously an incredible resource here on the podcast. But if you ever want one-on-one help, feel free to reach out. You can find me on the Facebook group, nick@giulioni.com. And you can also go to giulionirealestate.com if you ever need any help with anything Indy real estate related.
Awesome stuff, man. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate your heart and you're willing to give. Appreciates Diane's insight as well on her articles. No, thankful that you guys are here. Thankful that you guys are investing in Indy. Thank you for helping out our city and making it a better place to invest and stuff. So appreciate that, man. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode. And we will see you guys on the next one on the Indy Investor Pod. Take care.